Whoops, helps if you turn on your microphone. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Lee Love, and this is another edition of Photo Mentor Live Friday night. We are here every Friday night on from 9 p.m. to about 10 on Eastern Daylight Time. I guess that'll be changing to Eastern Time soon, Eastern Standard Time. Anyway, and that would be, I believe, 6 p.m. on Pacific Time, and if you're in other parts of the world, it would be 0100 Universal Coordinated Time. Anyway, we're glad you're here. And again, every week we answer questions for new photographers on all kinds of subjects. And if you'd like to join us, please feel free. If you're watching live, you can go to facebook.photomentor.tv, or you can also join us on YouTube by going to youtube.photomentor.tv, and that'll take you right to that page. You can leave a question for us. We'll try our best to answer. I ask that you please just put a Q, capital Q, and a colon in front of your question. That way it'll show up over here in my software and pop up on my screen so that I can see your question. Let's see what else we have going on here tonight. I started something last week. The first Friday of every month, I will be doing a review of photos. And if you want to send your photos in, we'll be glad to take a look at them and give you some feedback on them. Let's see here. We've got, so the way it works is you can submit up to 3 photos per month. The reviews will be anonymous. I mean, I'll know who you are, of course, because you sent them in, but when I talk about them, they'll just use some initials or some kind of numbering system. So, and the idea is not to discourage anyone. I want to encourage you, and that's the reason for doing that. And maybe that also might help some people that might be concerned about putting, not feel they're good enough or whatever to have their stuff submitted. So please feel free to do that. The way the images will be looked at or judged on composition, the technical aspect, and the subject matter, how well you tell the story or how well the subject comes across. Again, that'll be on the first Friday of every month on our live broadcast here on photomentor.tv. And if you want to, if you're interested in doing this, please send an email to help@photomentor.tv, and in the subject, just put the word review somewhere. And that way it'll get to me and I can sort it out, and we can look at your photos. We did some last week, a couple of them, and they were really actually very good. And so I think your work may be better than you think it is, and that's, of course, the only way to grow. So feel free to take advantage of that. Again, send it in to help. Whoops, let's see here. I think it's not working. help@photomentor.tv, and with the word review in the subject. Let's see. If you want to ask a question during the show live, you can do that by putting a Q, I think I mentioned, in the beginning of your question, and then that will show up here on my software. If you are not if you're watching this on the replay, that's great. We're glad to have you anyway. You can also send a question to help@photomentor.tv, and I will either reply directly to your question, or maybe we use it on next week's show. So anyway, one way or the other. I think that's everything, if I'm not mistaken, as far as housekeeping is concerned. So let's get started. Our first question comes from Keith, and Keith's question is, what's the best camera mount for a car? So I asked him a couple of questions about that. It's a camcorder, so it's not real heavy. And the reason I asked those questions is there's different kind of mounts for cars. One mount is for doing wildlife photography. So if there's a mount that goes over the window, you roll the window partially way down, and it goes over there and it clamps onto the window, and then you can mount your camera on that. There's some that are like bean bags that also allow you to do that. And I was trying to determine if that's what he was asking about, or whether he was looking for something else, and also whether the car was moving. Because if you're doing video, sometimes you mount a camcorder or a video camera, or even a still camera, I guess, on a moving car. So it is still and it's only a camcorder. So there's just about anything you could use there. I would look for, here's the trick. You're trying stability, of course. You want something that doesn't move. And if the car is stationary, you've got a lot of options there. I would say I would try, again, if you're trying to get a shot of the driver, again, I don't know if it's a camcorder, so it's video. It may be a shot of the driver or maybe out the window, but either way, you can put something over the window to protect it, some kind of padding, and then you can just get a clamp. They make, I don't think I have one. I have one over here, but I don't have one handy. You can get a clamp that will clamp onto a pole or something, and then it has this thread on it, and you can mount a ball head, a small ball head, and that way you're going to want to be able to move the camera around and adjust it and that type of thing. I don't know the brand. The ones I'm most familiar with are made by Manfrotto or by Kupo. That's Kupo. They make a lot of grip gear. You could start with those guys and see what you can find. And if you have more specific questions, you can feel free to email me or whatever, or after the show, we can chat and I can try and answer some of those specific questions for you. So, all right, let's see here. Anna, I'm sorry, I'm here. Anna, nice to see you, Anna. Thanks for joining us tonight. Let's see. I'd like to know what's the best softbox to buy for maternity shoots and infants. Okay. Here, I'm gonna give you a little bit of background. So I'm gonna tell you, here's the way a softbox works. A softbox doesn't necessarily make the light softer, although it doesn't make sense because it's kind of confusing. But what it does is it spreads the light out and makes it larger. So here's the deal. Here's the way, here's the way soft lighting works. The closer or the larger the light is to the subject, the softer the light will be. So I could just take, something like this, and if I had a large light, even though it was this big, it would still look soft on this object. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get a large surface, surface in as close as you can to the subject. So it doesn't really matter which one you use, as long as the light appears to be larger. Now, what a softbox does is the light hits it and it bounces around in this box, and it diffuses the light a little bit, so it makes it softer, not softer. It's kind of hard to explain without going into too much technical detail, but you ever looked at a cue ball or a 8-ball with a light shining on it? You see the specular highlights. That's what it's called. The sharpness, the bright spots. That's what a softbox does. Is it diffuses those specular highlights, but it doesn't necessarily make the light softer. So what does make the light softer is having it larger. So what you want, a newborn is not very big. You could probably get by with, I'd say, a 2-foot softbox. And you just want to get that as close as you can out of frame. Now, why do they make larger softboxes if I can get by with a 2-foot one? The reason is because if you're photographing a group, you can't get the softbox close because it'll be in the shot. So you need a bigger light. Now, let me give you some other tricks. First of all, photography is about solving problems. You'll hear me say this over and over and over again. So what if you don't have a softbox? There's another thing you could do. And I assume you're using a strobe. If you're not using a strobe, you're using a strobe or a constant light. I don't know if you are or not, but the thing is, you can take if it's a flash, just take a piece of foam core and aim it at the foam core and have it hit that foam core and bounce back. And that will give you a soft light, because what you're doing is you're diffusing the light and you're spreading it out and you're making it larger. So to answer, if you want to get a softbox, which, you should have a softbox anyway, it's just a nice light to have. I would say at least a 2-foot, maybe a 3-foot, if you can find one. They usually jump a little bit. And the problem is they get big and bulky. I mean, you can find some that are 4 feet and whatever, and they get a little large. And that's why I was saying that you could just use a flash and bounce it into a piece of foam core. That would do the same thing. But if you want, try and find one with, here's my recommendation. You want a softbox that the mount on the back of it uses what's called a Bowen mount, Bowen. And it's like 3 prongs, and they go and they lock in there. Now, why do you want to do that? The reason is, and so then let's say you have a speed light. In other words, one that goes on your camera. You take that off your camera and you can put it into the softbox. with an adapter, and the adapter takes the speed light mount and converts it to a Bowen mount. So why am I recommending a Bowen mount? What's the point? Because they make soft boxes you can just put a speed light in. You don't need any kind of mount on it. The reason is because if you once you grow or you want to use a different light, you can take that speed light off, and now maybe you want to buy a studio light, and now you can use that same softbox just by using that Bowen mount. The Bowen mount is probably the most common mount available, and that's why I'm recommending it. Everybody and their brother makes a softbox for a Bowen mount light. Westcott is a great one. Boy, there's a whole bunch of them out there. Westcott is probably one of the more common ones. Photex is another good one out there. It's a pretty good quality one. What's another one? Not Lunadyne. That's something else. There's makes another good one as well. So if you get a softbox with a Bowen mount, then you can adapt anything to it. You can adapt the speed light, or you can adapt the studio light down the road. That makes sense? I hope it does. If not, ask a question. I'll try and help you out. But I would say a 2-foot softbox would be about right. Get it as close to the child as you can, just out of frame, and that'll give you a really nice soft light, which I'm sure that's what you're going for. Yes. Okay. You are using one, meaning what? A speed light? Is that what you're saying, Anna? You're using a speed light? Okay. How far does my lens need to be for moon photography? That's there's another question here by Keith. And I apologize for not, I had to use a different computer here over here. And so, I'm a little bit looking away. Okay. How far does the lens have to be, or can't read this here. Let's see. Okay. How far does my lens need to be to use the moon photography? So what he's asking is how large of a lens, what's the focal length? The longer, the better. If because what happens is if you have a smaller lens, then this moon is gonna appear smaller in the picture, of course. And so then you're gonna have to go in and crop it digitally. And when you do that, you lose some quality. But, the longest lens you have. Now, here's this interesting thing about photographing the moon that most people, the mistake they make when they first start. The camera looks at the moon, and it sees this bright object, and it sees all this black around it. So what it does is it tries to increase the exposure to compensate for some of the black. What happens though is it overexposes the moon, and so the moon looks all washed out. So what you want to do there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can go to manual, or you can just override your camera. But what you want to do is you want to underexpose the picture, essentially, is what you're trying to do. Turn the ISO down or whatever. You can use a faster shutter speed. You can use a smaller aperture. Because think about it. The moon, it's like photographing a light bulb, right? If you're going to photograph a light bulb and you want to be able, you want to see the elements inside, let's say it's not frosted, then you're going to have to really turn the exposure down, because that light bulb is going to be really bright. That's exactly what happens with the moon. And most people, when they start out, the problem is that they overexpose it, because the camera looks at it and it tries to increase the exposure, and you want to override that and turn it down and underexpose. Okay, let's see what Ann has to say. The other one is, I'm actually trying to purchase one for the first time. Not sure. I assume what you mean, a flash, or I'm not sure, Anna, if you mean the flash and or the softbox. But let's just pick either one. Let's say you're trying to figure out what you want to do. I would say when you're starting, you want a flash that's battery powered, because you're probably going to be doing this. If you're going to be new and newborns, you're going to be doing them in homes. You probably have electricity if you do it that way, so you're probably going to be okay that way. But a speed light, the nice thing about a speed light, when I refer to a speed light, I mean an off-camera flash, is, the kind that goes on top of your camera. They're called different things. They just call them strobes. Some people call them speed lights. The reason those are nice and why I recommend them is because you can always use it. So even though I carry around in my professional bag, $4,000 worth of Pro Photo battery powered studio lights, I also carry 1 or 2 speed lights with me, and they're cheap, inexpensive manual lights. I think these are actually not manual, but the point is I always carry that as a backup, number one. And number two, I may want to just throw that somewhere else. Maybe I want to put a little light in the background, streak of light on the background or something. I can always pull that out and operate it manually. So that's why I say start with a speed light first, because even if you get studio lights, then you can still use that for something else. It's not just wasted money. Okay. Softbox. Oh, so yeah. Okay. So if you're talking about the softbox as your first one, then I would say, again, what you're looking for, and if you email me or you want to leave a message here, so I know I have your contact information via Facebook. I can try and send you some recommendations, but you want at least a 2-foot one. That's the other thing. Oh, here's something else. They make different kinds of softboxes, and this is an kind of important point. They make some that have a ring, and they have holes around the outside of this ring. And the speed light has these rods, and you put these rods through the backing or through the softbox, and then you bend them and you put them in these holes. Those are kind of a pain in the butt. They're most common. They're nice because they fold up flat, but the problem is that if you're doing studio work or on location work like I do a lot of, then it's a hassle putting those things together. So you have two options. One is you could take, and what you're looking for is a softbox called like a rapid softbox. I think that's and what it is you just push the center down and it pops and it folds out. I know Photex makes one, and there's a couple other companies. I'll try and find one, and I'll send you a message with some links to them, or post it in the comments here. But that makes it much easier to work with, and they're much more rapid. I think one of the lights that I'm using here is a 2-foot softbox, but it's called a beauty dish, a 2-foot beauty dish. And the difference is the reason I mention is because it's that rapid style, right? You just push it in the center and it pops out. The difference in a beauty dish where, in a softbox, the light is in the rear and it just hits the surface of this internal baffle or material and it diffuses it. The difference in a softbox, excuse me, a beauty dish, is there's a reflector right here inside the beauty dish, and it hits that reflector, and then it bounces out. And so it's just a little bit different look. But that also you can go with that too. It still does the same kind of thing. It still diffuses the light and still makes it softer. And so so I would look at a rapid or a quick mount softbox, or look for beauty dish, a foldable beauty dish. The other option you could do, and this is kind of what I do, because when I'm doing magazine assignment work, I don't want to carry a bunch of gear with me. Typically, I've got to go in, I'm dealing with some kind of an executive or celebrity or whatever. They don't have a lot of time, and so they don't want me to be sitting there messing around, like setting a bunch of stuff up. So what I carry, and I can probably grab one if you guys want to wait. Thought there was one handy. There's not. Okay. So what it is, it's umbrella. And so it's an umbrella with a reversible back. So it has a black backing on it. And you open it up and you take the speed light and you aim it into the umbrella, and it bounces the light back out. Works really, really well. And they're collapsible. You can fold them up. And they're also inexpensive. So I like about a 42 inch is kind of my favorite, right around in that size. But if you get a reversible one, the backing comes off. And then what you do when you shoot the light through it, instead of bouncing it in, it spreads the light more evenly because it's curved, right? Let's see, it's curved. The light hits this part right here, and it diffuses the light. And I'll carry 2 of those with me, and I can light up just about anything. I can make any kind of picture with that. If I'm photographing a group or a bunch of people or just one person, I can decide how to use that umbrella. So I would say that's also something to look forward to, is just look at an umbrella with a reversible or removable back, and see if that'll work for you, because those are like $30, I think, and they're easy. I stick a couple of them in my camera, or on the side of my camera bag, and away I go. So anyway, I hope that helped. Let's see what else. I think that's all the questions right now. Oh, okay. Let's see. Keith has another question about Is a GoPro a good camera for close-up storm photography? I'd say, well, it's a good camera and that it's weatherproof and that it can get wet. It's not and it may be okay because it's pretty wide as well. What you really probably want to do is maybe I'd say look at some time lapse. See if the GoPro will do time lapse for you. That could be pretty impressive. But I'd say a GoPro would probably work pretty well for that. And again, they're rugged, so that's the one nice thing. If it rains, storms, or whatever, you're not gonna it's not gonna damage the unit, the camera. Okay, thanks, guys. Good questions. Appreciate that. I hope that was helpful. Um, Again, on any of this stuff, you can always feel free to email me at help@photomentor.tv or leave a comment here in the Facebook group, and I will reply to that. If you want something specific, I'll try and send you a link to a specific product if that's what you're looking for. Okay, let's see what else we got here. All right, so our other question tonight is this. I love this question, by the way. It's my favorite question. Adrian asks, can someone please tell me what a full frame is? Is there a half frame? Which, if you're a new photographer, you don't know the terms. That makes perfect sense, right? That's a good question. What are the differences and what does it do? I have a Nikon DSLR D3000. Okay. So, a full frame is the same size sensor as a 35 millimeter negative. Now, here's a little bit of history and why this is. When Kodak first developed the digital sensor, they were very, very expensive. So in order to produce a camera that meant it was fine for professionals, but it didn't work that well for consumers because the prices were really exorbitant. So what they did is they took the sensor and they reduced it down a 1.5 times. And that made it just a little bit smaller, still really good quality, and still was a DSLR style camera. And it also reduced the cost of the sensor, but it also reduced the cost of the lenses because the lenses could be smaller because they didn't have to cover as large of an area of the sensor. And so therefore they were able to use that to produce consumer cameras. And those are referred to as a cropped sensor. Nikon uses the term DX. I think Canon just calls it a crop, or I guess they call it an AFS, is their lens mount for their crop sensor cameras. And I'll show you what it looks like here. Now, I don't know if you can read this. On the far left-hand side is what a medium format sensor would look like, relatively speaking. It gives you the dimensions. It's 53.7 times 40.2 millimeters. Not important. It's got a crop factor or of 0.64. So in other words, a lens on a medium format camera is actually going to be a little bit wider than it would on a normal camera. But the next column is the size of what a full frame sensor looks like. And that's a 36 by 23 size sensor. So so if you just if you just ignore look at the full frame, and then there's another one to the right called APS-H and APS-C. APS-H was kind of an odd size sensor. It was that Canon developed, but the most common size sensor is in a crop sensor is what they call APS-C, and that's the size of it. So that's a 1.52 crop size, if you see that. But you can see the difference in the sensor size between the full frame and the APS-C. So what happens there? So the problem is that the sensor was smaller, and so therefore the quality was a little less because the real estate wasn't as big on the sensor. Of course, they had to take and make this what they call the photo sites, which is the thing that captures the light, smaller. Well, the problem with that is then they weren't as good for gathering low light. So traditionally, not anymore, but traditionally, smaller sensors meant they didn't work as well in lower light. So full frame has always been, if you want better low light capability, go with full frame. The problem with that is nowadays the quality has gotten so good on this technology, the sensors and the way they're able to process it. Even a crop sensor can produce an amazing image. And what they've noticed also is if you look at the specs on these cameras, you'll find that not only the sensor size is smaller, but also the resolution. So there's kind of a trade-off. You either get resolution and low light, or poor low light performance, or you get great low light performance and poor resolution. So if you notice, most cameras nowadays in the middle of the range are about 18 to 24 megapixels. It seems like they've locked onto about 20 to 24 megapixels because that gives you the most resolution and yet still a very good low light capability. So that's the difference between a crop sensor and a full frame. Now, why would you want to go with a full frame? Well, maybe you don't have to. A lot of people think they have to. I suggest it's not necessary, but it depends on what kind of photography you're doing, quite honestly. But a full frame camera will give you typically a little better low light, even though and it also gives you more resolution. So let's say, for example, you're looking at a Nikon D850. Nikon D850 is a 42 megapixel camera versus their crop sensor camera, which is 24 megapixels. Well, some people say, well, I don't need 42 megapixels. I'm not going to be making billboards or anything like that. It's not that. The reason you go to the higher resolution is because then, you can take and I can crop the picture. So let's say I can't get close enough. Let's say I don't have a telephoto lens or whatever. So let's say this is the picture I've taken, but I really want to zoom in. So now I can crop the picture down this much and 4 times and not see any difference in, well, 2 times, I guess, really, and not see any degradation in quality. So that's one reason for the higher megapixels. Not that it's going to be, it will be somewhat sharper, but it's really mainly for cropping and for doing large print. Okay, so let's see what else we got here. So Keith asked another question, and is which is better, Nikon or Samsung? Well, that's a loaded question. Normally it's Nikon or Canon. I would say Samsung has done some pretty good technology. I love their monitors and their TVs, by the way. I have nothing but Samsung TVs, and I'm looking at 3 Samsung monitors right here in front of me. And so it's not so much as which is better, but here's what I would say. There's going to be more support for a Nikon camera than there will be a Samsung camera, because Samsung's kind of off a little bit. They're not a standard product. So I would say if you buy a Canon or a Nikon, then the chances are you're going to find any accessory you want. Keith, I know you're a storm chaser. You love photographing storms. If you wanted to add a lightning trigger to your camera, chances are you're going to find one for a Nikon or a Canon. You may not find one that works with a Samsung. That would be the problem. So the accessories and the third-party support is going to be much, much greater on a Nikon in this particular case. It's not which is better, but there's more support and more lenses and more things like that. So I think the Nikon would be a much better investment for you. Okay. Let's see here. Let's go back and, okay. So I think we've answered the question about the crop sensor. Hopefully I have. Okay. The next one is, this was kind of a fun one. I just kind of threw this in. Caitlin asked, has anyone done a sprinkler Sendoff? Well, it was just a misspelling. She actually meant a sparkler Sendoff. And I had no idea. I had to look this up. I was like, what did she mean? What is a sprinkler Sendoff? So anyway, she meant sparkler Sendoff. I have no suggestions or any on how to do that, but I just thought it was kind of funny. Okay. April asks, this may be a silly question. By the way, April, there are no silly questions. I promise you. But for example, modeling photographers take a picture of a model. As soon as they take the picture, it's instantly on the computer. Okay. So what she's talking about, what she's asking about, is how you do that. And the answer is what's called tethering. So most of the time it's in a studio, and most of the time, especially when I do product photography, I always tether. And so what I'll do is I'll take my camera, I'll use a USB port, and I'll connect it to my laptop, and I have software on there that displays what the camera's seeing. When I take a picture, it automatically shows up on the laptop. And the reason you do that is so that you can show the client, again, because I do advertising, a lot of advertising work, and my clients typically want to see what's going on. They have either a storyboard or something I'm following, or they're trying to look at how to lay in some text over top of an ad or something. They need to be able to see the photo so they can figure out if it's going to work for their needs or not. So by tethering, it shows up on the laptop. Also, when you tether, you can have the laptop software do some modification to the image on the fly. In other words, it can sharpen it, it can tone it, it can adjust the contrast, whatever, and therefore it makes it easier for them to visualize what the ad's going to look like. Because a lot of times they don't. They can't do that. So anyway, hope that helps. So that's what she's talking about. April is tethering, and so what you do is you connect your camera to your computer, and therefore now you can do it wirelessly, but it doesn't work as well. They're getting better, but the problem is you can't send, most of the time you can't send raw files wirelessly because they're so big. And so by using tethering via a laptop and a direct cable, you can move the raw photo right over to the laptop as well. And the other thing I'll do when I've done some product photography on site for certain customers and clients, I'll have them review the images right there as we're looking at them, and then they can rank them. And it's, oh, that's a 1. Okay, yeah, we don't think we want that. Oh, that's great. Let's take that one. That's a 5. And so by having them rank the images right there on location, when I get back here to the office to start editing the images, I already know what I'm going to. I don't have to send them proofs. They've already proofed the images right there on site. So it makes it certainly a lot easier. So anyway, let's see. I would like to ask, between a Lumix GH5, the Canon 5D Mark III, or a Sony A7 II, which is the best for low light music video? So this is kind of a trick question. This is from Kelly, and probably the 5D Mark III might be the best low light. But the Lumix, which is what I'm using here, by the way, the GH5 and GH5S and a G9. The thing about the Lumix, okay, let me back up. If you're going to be doing a music video, you're going to have some light. So the low light, if you're shooting video, low light doesn't exist. You have to have some light because you have to motivate the scene. In other words, you want to have it look like it's coming from one direction. You want to have some backlight. You want to have it interesting. Shooting in the dark for a music video is not going to look very interesting. Even if you look at a film, a movie, and it doesn't look lit, I guarantee it's lit, so it doesn't look like it's lit. That's the whole point. So it's not so much that which is going to be better in low light, it's what's going to be better in the video, and what kind of video you produce. And that's where I would answer the question, not necessarily low light. Because again, you're going to have some light. I don't care how you're going to do it. You may make it look like it's not lit. In other words, when you see a scene in a movie with candlelight, it's not the candles that are lighting the person's face. I promise you. There's a candle there, but then they have another light that's changed the color temperature that flickers maybe and is lighting the face to make it look like it's the candle light. And that's what I call my motivated. The candle is what's called the motivated light. It looks like it's coming from that direction, but it's not. Anyway, to answer your question, the one reason I like about the GH5, it is an amazing cinema camera. It has some fantastic video capabilities that even most camera, even Sony and these other guys don't even have yet. And their camera, the GH5 was produced 3 years ago when it came out. So, and I won't go on all the details now, but for video, I really like the Lumix system and the Panasonic product. So I would look very seriously at the GH5 if you're going to be shooting video. It also has the best image stabilization in the industry, bar none. Everyone will certainly agree with that. I think they should. Anyway, I hope that helps, Kelly. Okay, think of investing in a full frame camera next year as well. But what are your thoughts on the 70-200 or 24-70? I'm starting out and would like it for family portraits, weddings, maternity, etc. Whether you go full frame or not, the 70-200 f2.8 and the 24-70 2.8 are great lenses. There are 3 lenses that are called the kind of the trinity for lenses in most the Nikon and the camera product line. The first one is the 14-24. That's a pretty wide lens. Some people don't go with that one because you can't put a filter on it. So it would be the 16-35 would be the equivalent. The next one is the 24-70 2.8, And then the one above that is a 70 to 200 2.8. All great lenses. I have all three of those. They're fantastic. The 7200 2.8 is probably maybe my most favorite lens because it's so versatile. I can shoot portraits with it. I can do sports with it, which I don't do much more anymore. But it's just a great all-around lens. Everyone should own a 7200 2.8, whether you have a crop sensor or full frame. Now, having said that, the 24 to 72.8 is what I refer to as my meat and potatoes lens, because the reason is it I can use it for just about anything: portraits, wildlife, not wildlife, wide angle kind of stuff. So if I don't know what lens I'm going to need or what kind of situation I'm going to run into, and I can only have one lens, the 24 to 70 would be my lens for that. Now, there's always a caveat to all this stuff, and you're gonna hear me say this over and over if you watch this show. But photography is nothing but a compromise. Everything is a compromise. So what I have found, if you're shooting an event, a wedding or event photography, the 24 to 70, as great as it is, might be a tad short because you can't move around as much and you need to get a little bit closer. So I know a lot of event photographers that are friends of mine, they've gone to the 24 to 120 f4 version of the lens because it gives them that little extra reach they need. So if you need that extra reach, if you're doing event photography, the 24 to 120 is a great lens. But if you think you can get away with it, the 24 to 70 is certainly a terrific lens and something that you should consider. So, and the other thing is you can rent a lot of these lenses. So that's the other thing to do, is kind of think about renting something and try it out and see what you think. Okay. Alyssa says, I'm shooting a wedding this weekend with a friend from high school. Could you give me your best piece of wedding shooting advice? Well, first of all, there's kind of a, I don't do weddings anymore, but I used to shoot weddings many, many, many years ago. That's how I started my career. And one thing I learned is there's a wedding clock. In other words, certain things happen at a certain time. So you want to make sure you don't want to miss something. That's the problem. You want to make sure you capture. So let's say, for example, the first image is the bride getting dressed, maybe with her and her bridesmaid. That's shot number one. You want to make sure you get that. Number two would be the groom getting dressed. Not as important. If you miss it, it's not a big deal because they're guys, and we don't like to mess with stuff like that. And we'll probably, we're not going to be as amenable to doing that as the bride will. But anyway, so that would be the second shot if you can get it. Something with the groomsmen. The third shot is maybe, and you could get, this would kind of go in with shot number one. If you can get a picture of the mother with the bride, that was a great photo too. That kind of goes in 1 and 1A. The second shot is, or the third shot you want to be able to get is if the whoever's giving the bride away, if it's her father, you want to get a shot of them coming down the aisle. So you jump in the aisle, you're shooting back against with the pulpit behind you, and you want to get a shot of them coming down the aisle. It's very, very important, that shot. The next shot is you want to get the bride and groom at the altar, taking their vows, just a couple of static shots there. You don't want to, the next one you don't want to miss is the kiss. You got to get the kiss. The kiss is kind of important. So you want to make sure you get that shot. That's the other one. The next one, of course, is them coming back down the aisle as Mr. and Mrs. And then from there, it's kind of depends on what the bride wants you to do. Typically, you'll do some family photos with the different families, and that's usually set up ahead of time. That's like herding cats. My advice is you're going to have to be a little bit stern. You have to kind of jump in there and direct them. Hey, you, look, come on, get over here, get over. You got to be a little bit mean, not mean, but you got to be tough about it because they're not interested in having their picture taken. And they are looking for you for advice. You've got to tell them what to do. Stand this way, stand that way, or keep your eyes open, that kind of thing. You want to be talking to them. So that's the hardest part, is shooting the families and getting decent pictures of them. And then, of course, the reception. And that's kind of just, you want some detail shots of the cake, of the ring, of that kind of stuff. But the reception is kind of catch as catch can. So that's my advice for wedding photography. There's a lot more to it. I would check with people that actually do weddings, a lot more weddings. But those are, if you ask for basic advice, those are things that I would look at. Okay, let's see what. Hello, Joyce. Thanks for joining us. Nice to see you on. Let's see what Joyce has to say this evening. Joyce is asking, do you really need to edit every single photo we took? If editing softwares are so powerful enough, does it mean there's not enough? Does it mean there's too much difference between the brands and models of the camera? Joyce, that is an excellent question. So let me kind of give you my view on it. Well, first of all, when you say every photo, I assume what you're talking about is before the client sees the photo. So what I will do, and again, I'm a commercial photographer, so I'm working with companies and things like that. I don't do weddings or newborns or anything like that. I do some teaching, but so my stuff's a little bit different. But here's what I do: I will make a quick pass. I'll bring them into Lightroom and I'll make a quick pass of the photos, reject, whatever, and I'll do a starring system: 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. I'll give it a 1 of all the ones that I think I want to send the client. Then I go back through them again, and I look at them and go, oh, wow, I gave that one a 1, but the one next to it is just as good, and maybe their face is just turned just a little bit, and so it's not enough. It doesn't make sense to send them both of them. So I will narrow that down. Now, here's a little bit of life lesson I learned. If you send your client a photo that you don't like, they will pick it. I guarantee it. I don't know what it is, but they do it every single time. Even magazines. I will send a magazine and say, hey, give us 12 photos we can pick from. I'll send them 12 photos. This one's okay. Maybe they will pick the one I hate the most. I don't know why. I've talked to other photographers about this. It's just the way it is. So what I'm trying to tell you is be sure and narrow those choices. It's not about quantity. They don't need to see 500 pictures. Give them the best of the best and narrow those down, because if you don't want your name on it, then you don't want to send it to them, because they'll pick it and they'll want to print it. So anyway, that's a side note. So what I'll do is I'll go through and do a quick thing. Then I will maybe do just some simple adjustments, nothing big. I'll just lay them over. Maybe I'll do a little bit of sharpening, maybe some cropping if I see one picture looks really good, but it's very, very basic. So it's not really editing. It's just kind of proofing. I'll send the proofs to my client. They'll come back and they'll tell me which ones they want. Then those are the ones that they're purchasing, and those are the ones that I edit. Now, I think if what you're asking at that point is, if the cameras are so good, why are we doing editing? I think that's where you're going with this. And let me give it to you this way. First of all, you're an artist. You're a photographer. You're creative. You're not a photocopier. The picture that comes out of the camera is not a photo. It's just captured pixels. Okay. What you have to do as an artist is you have to turn that into your vision. How do you see it? What is it you want to do? So like, for example, a lot of times I'll shoot a little bit wide because I don't quite know what I'm going to do. When I bring it into software, I may want to crop it some. It may look that way, this way, but now I see it a little differently. So I believe that editing is 50% of the process. I don't have it here on the screen, but one of the quotes from Ansel Adams goes something like this: is that the negative is the score and the print is the performance. And what he's trying to say is he captures the negative, but it's how it's printed that turns it into a photo. And the same thing is that I want my work to represent my vision, what I see, the way I think the image should look, not the way the camera captured it. In fact, I shoot raw, and I don't want the camera to do anything. I don't want it to sharpen. I don't want it to put any color, contrast, anything. I want to be able to do that externally, because I may change my mind about how that image is supposed to look. So let's give me an example. Say I shot a photo, maybe a portrait of somebody, or again, a magazine. I've gone in, I've done a magazine shoot, and I photographed the person, and I bring the photos back and I look at them. And maybe the article has to do with, I don't know, I'll just make up a story. Maybe the guy saved a cat from a tree. Well, then I might want to tone that image. I might want to crop it. I might want to make it tell that story, help convey that story. The background is going to convey that story. Maybe I want to bump up the white balance of it. Maybe I want a little warmer instead of a little cooler. And so that all has to come afterwards. In fact, my process is I will import the images if possible. Again, unless I'm on a deadline, I'll import the images and then I'll wait a week and I'll go back and look at them. And I don't edit them right away. And the reason is because I have a much better perspective on the image. Well, I would say that your editing is the other part of um, your vision of what you're trying to say. I wish I could probably load one here, but I don't want to take the time to do it. I should show you. I don't like to show my work because I'm not proud of it. I don't want it to be about me. It's not about me. It's about you guys. I'm here to help you guys, not me. And so I'm not trying to brag or show off. So I rarely show myself. But if I were to show you some of my images, they're heavily processed because that's my style. I was just telling somebody yesterday, somebody will see a picture and they'll tell me, "Oh, that looks like a Lee Love photo." I'm like, "Really?" They'll see something in that photo that represents my style. If you look at my work, it's very dramatic, unless I'm shooting for a client and then it needs to be different. But if it's my own stuff, I like dramatic, cinematic looking images. That's not going to come out of the camera that way. I have to do that. I have to decide how to do that. So the last thing I'll leave you with, Jill and Joyce, and this is an excellent question. I'm really glad you asked it, is that everything you do is an edit. The lens you pick is in where you stand, what aperture, what depth of field. All of that is editing. All of that is deciding how you want to represent an image. The editing is just the second part of that. It's just taking that information and conveying it differently. I have found that when I do an accurate color chart, for example, if I go and do a perfect white balance on most of the images, they look awful. They look sterile. They're too blue. So even though I get a perfect white balance, I will change that white balance based on what I want that image to say. I hope that helps. I hope that makes sense to you. But I'd love to discuss this further with you over a chat or video chat or whatever, because it really is important to understand how that fit. Now, before I forget, let me go one more thing. It's not necessarily about fixing a picture. This is the problem. A lot of people become Photoshop. Okay, I'll just fix it in Photoshop. That's not what I'm suggesting. Now, you can go in Photoshop and you can remove things, and maybe you didn't see something and you want to change it. That's okay. But I see a lot of photographers, especially new photographers, that think, "Oh, I'll just shoot raw in case I blow out the exposure. I can just fix it in Photoshop." That is not what I'm saying, and that is not where you want to be. And here's the reason: for every 2 minutes you spend in the field taking a photo, will sometimes cost you hours in post processing. In other words, I see a lot of people, they'll take a photo and they'll ask for criticism on it. And I'll look at it and I'll say, if you'd have stepped 6 inches to the right, that would have been excellent. That picture would have worked much better because maybe the framing or the composition is right. So take time to get the image as best you can in camera, and therefore you don't have to do as much processing and editing. But if you do, you want that editing to represent your vision as an artist of what you're trying to say. So that's an excellent question. Thank you very, very much for that, Joyce. That's great, and I hope more people would look at that because it's really important. Okay, let's see if we got any others here. Okay, so we're almost out of time. Let's go to the next one. See what else we got here. This is from. Okay, so this is we already answered that one. I think it means I have a Nikon D80 and struggle with sharpness. If it's close up portrait, the sharpness is great, but when I zoom out, it's not so much. There's a lot of variables there that it could be, but regardless, and a lot of people will give you advice. Oh, you need to buy a 50 millimeter 1.8. You got to do this and nifty 50. But okay, first of all, before you spend a dime, take your camera, put it on a tripod or something rigid, tabletop, put a piece of newspaper against the wall or something, and see what's going on with you. Try and figure out what's going on with your camera. Shoot aperture wide open, take a shot, close it down a stop, take another shot, and go through the entire range and look to see if indeed there is a focusing problem or a sharpness problem. Maybe there's a problem with the lens, maybe not. But if you don't do a test, you don't know. Whenever I've gotten to the point where whenever there's a problem, I always assume it's my fault because I'll take it and I'll do this test like I'm talking about, and I'm like, oh, it looks perfect. So it's got to be the bozo behind the camera, right? So, in fact, they've even bought new lenses and then realized they still have the same problem, which means it wasn't the camera. So there could be a problem, but do a test first and also do it on a tripod or solid surface so that you can replicate it. And then that'll make a difference. Now, every lens has a sweet spot. And what I mean by that is let's say the lens starts at 2.8 and goes up to f8 and up and goes up to f22 or whatever. Along that line, every lens will have one aperture setting that's better quality than the rest. Now, typically, I can tell you it's almost right in the middle. F8, F11, F14 are pretty much the sharpest points of every lens, even a kit lens on a D80. So that you want to know where that is. So if you're trying to get something that's super sharp, so what may be happening is when you're getting close or portrait and you're zoomed in, you may be at that sweet spot. But when you zoom out, the aperture opens up wide open, 3.5. Maybe it's a little bit soft. So first of all, figure that out. And then that gives you a chance to know what's going on. Don't buy anything until you know for sure, though. There's always more lenses that we want to buy, and I understand that. Believe me, I have more gear than I could possibly use. But it seems like I always get the impression that all of us, well, we got to have more gear to fix the problem. And then when I find out, two things happen when I buy new gear. Number one, I'm either disappointed because I realize it didn't fix the problem I had. The pictures are still suck. And then the second thing is I get motivated. It's like, wow, I got this. This is a great lens. I need to now go and shoot more with it. And so sometimes that will happen as well. Anyway, I hope that helps, Amber. I know it's frustrating, believe me, because we all want our pictures to be super sharp. But I would tell you, and you'll hear me say this over and over, technique trumps technology. What do I mean by that? I'm trying to tell you, it's not about the camera. It's not about the lens. It's about knowledge. Understanding how your camera works and what's going on will allow you to overcome or circumvent a limitation of your equipment. I cannot tell you, I should just do a whole show on stories about where I've had to overcome a problem. I was shooting for Audi Corporation, their headquarters. I was photographing the president of the company. I went there 3 days ahead of time, took photos, lay out where we're going to shoot. Got there the day of the shoot, there's a freaking car in the way in the showroom, and I couldn't move it because there was a big glass case behind it. So I had to figure out how to shoot around it and still make the picture work. Okay? I couldn't say, oh, can you move this car out of the way? That is what photography is all about. So we're never going to have enough time, money, or gear. Our job is to figure out how to make the best photo we can given those limitations. Let me see if I can get one more in here, and then we'll call it an evening. Julia says, I know this is kind of a big question, but I'm interested in getting a digital camera and looking at my first time camera. This is a common question. I get this one a lot. I would say, look, there's a lot of cameras out there. The first thing I'll tell you, it's not the camera. It's the photographer. I know I harp on that, but anyway, I would say if you're starting out, there are two cameras that seem to be really good cameras for beginners. And I would say look at the Nikon D3500 or the Canon T7. Those cameras offer a lot. They're very, very capable. There's a lot of capability, a lot of accessories, a lot of extensions you can put on them. Get great quality, and they're really good cameras. 24 megapixels, I think both of them are. And there's nothing wrong with either one of those cameras. And if you can learn to take great pictures with those cameras, then when you upgrade, then you'll even be better. But I tell people, even if you have an iPhone, start taking pictures with your iPhone. Start learning composition, composing, framing, lighting. Learn to see. That's what makes a great photographer. It's not about the camera they're using. It's about their vision. They get hired because they have a vision. You think Annie Leibovitz gets hired because of her equipment? No. She brings a vision to the shoot. They'll ask her, what do you think about this? How would you shoot this? And she'll come up with a concept or an idea, and they'll go, we love that. And that's why they hire her. And it's the same way you want to, even at your level, you want to get at that point. Even if you're starting out, you want to think about this is that what you bring to the photographic community and what vision you can do and bring to photography so that people hire you because of the way you see the world. That's the most important thing. I apologize for harping on that, but it really is the essence of what's going on. Okay, I mentioned this when we started, and that is that um, we on the first Friday of every month, I'm doing a photo review. If you want to be you want to have your work reviewed, we'd love to have you. And again, here's what you need to do. You can submit up to 3 questions, 3 images per month, um, and you know, you can do more, but the only 3 at one time. The reviews will be anonymous, meaning that I'm not going to call anyone out. I won't even use your name when I mean, it's not anonymous to me, but I won't use your name when I do the review because I want to encourage you. I don't want to discourage you. I'll be looking at the pictures to see if they work on composition wise, technical, and subject matter. And then the first Friday of the month on that we do here on the Photo Mentor Live, we'll do a review. I'll mark them up. I'll show you how that works. And so if you're interested in doing this, I'd love to have you submit some photos. So just send an email to help@photomentor.tv, and in the subject matter, put the word review if you don't mind. And that way it'll filter it out because I get hundreds of emails from all kinds of email accounts that I have. So anyway, thanks again. I appreciate the questions. Great having everybody here this evening. Again, reminder, we do this every Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time, and 1 p.m. Universal Coordinated time. So anyway, thanks again, and hope to see you next week.